Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the book of Psalms. Today we are in Psalm 82, and as we examine this Psalm of Asaph, you're going to have a couple of things that are going to be, for lack of a better term, sticky points in trying to figure out exactly what it is that Asaph is saying in a couple of statements. This psalm is not very long at all. It's only 8 verses. It doesn't take but a minute to read. And yet, at the same time, there are some very deep concepts and some very interesting concepts that are going to be introduced in these few short verses. And so, before delving into the question marks or the difficulties in understanding or in applying what it is that's being said, let's take a look at the psalm itself. Asaph writes in Psalm 82, beginning in verse 1. God stands in the congregation of the mighty. He judges among the gods. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Free them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are unstable. I said, you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But you shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. So did you catch the part that can be confusing for people? Especially as you just read this in isolation. You have this statement that is going to be made at verse 1, and it's also going to be reiterated to some degree in the latter stages of the psalm in verse 6. And it is this idea of God being among the gods. And you have this sentiment because the first thing that jumps to our mind is there is only one God. And therefore, if there is only one God, then how can he be among the gods? Well, let me take just a moment to give you a couple of different possibilities when it comes to how it is to be interpreted, because this is one of those passages where there actually has to be somewhat of an interpretation process within the confines of the translation process in translating it from Hebrew into English because of the terms that are used. And so, breaking down verse 1, it says, God stands in the congregation of the mighty. Now, the name or the term the mighty here is the term El. There are actually some translations that state it this way, and I believe more accurately this way. God stands in the assembly of God, or in the congregation of God. In other words, he stands presiding over his own people or his own congregation. And then the second phrase of verse 1 is he judges among the gods, is the way it's translated in the New King James and in several other translations. The phrase there in Hebrew carries with it the idea that he judges among or at the center of, and then the word is Elohim. Now, Elohim is a word that is often used in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew, as a reference to the Godhead or to God himself. But it also is used in reference to the idolatrous gods, or the term gods in general. And so it's a matter of translative interpretation as to whether or not you are applying it to the central character, God himself, or whether you're applying it to all the other characters or all of the other gods of the nations, or whether you're even using it metaphorically to speak of those who are mighty and preside in high power, like kings and rulers and things of that nature, who often thought of themselves as gods or looked at themselves in those particular ways. So there's several different possibilities in the form of translation in trying to lay these things out. So there's an interpretive process that has to be undertaken here. Now, as you look at the psalm, the context in many ways is going to delineate how it's going to be utilized. And in this psalm, what you have is Asaph talking about the judgment power of God. He says, God stands in the congregation of the mighty and he judges among the gods. He judges among the Elohim. Now, he's standing, the word among means in the center of or in the midst of. And so he stands in the congregation of the mighty and judges in the center of the gods. But what is this judgment? And who is being judged? You know, in verse 2, he talks about the fact, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? That's not talking about God. He's not here accusing God of judging and showing partiality to the wicked. But instead, he's talking about those who are supposed to be judging among men. He then goes on in verse 3 and he gives his statements of what they should be doing. And you can tell here that he's talking to those who are among men, who are the rulers, who are the judges among men. Because he says, defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy, free them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are unstable. And then he says, verse 6, I said, speaking of Asaph, I said, you are gods. There's that word Elohim again. And it is you being utilized here in the sense of you are mighty. You have authority is the idea. You are mighty, and all of you are children of the Most High. We know that this use of Elohim is not being used in relation to God because it says you are this, and yet you are children of the Most High. So he's not talking about God. He is also not talking about idolatrous gods, because there would be no way to rectify those statements together. What he is talking about is he's using this in the metaphorical sense of those who are judges with might and authority on earth among people. You are Elohim, and all of you are children of the Most High, but you shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Ultimately, you're going to die just like any other man. So how are you going to live knowing that you're going to die? As you look at Psalm 82, you've got to break down some things because it can get confusing with the terminology that's being used, because Asaph is using terminology that has many different possibilities, and usually when we see it, it's going one way. But here, it's being used in a different sense. So what is the ultimate point of Psalm 82? It is that God is the judge of all the earth. Verse 8 says, arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. In other words, God is the one on the pedestal. He stands in the congregation. He is the one who ultimately judges among, at the center of, those who have authority and those who are mighty. They answer ultimately to him. And so while the judges of the earth may not always do what's right, and while the judges of the earth may not be those who act with justice at the forefront, they too have someone to whom they will answer. And that is the point of Psalm 82. Even the judges, the kings, those who have authority are not the ultimate authority, because that remains with God. These are the things that I see in Psalm 82. I hope that they have been beneficial to you, and I hope that our study has been fruitful for you today. Thank you for watching today's video. Next time, we'll come back and we'll begin looking at Psalm 83. I hope that you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.